I was a stand-in for the woman Adrian deeply loved, something no one else knew. They all thought I was his girlfriend. He was handsome, wealthy, and utterly devoted to me. I couldn't bring myself to leave because my love for him was genuine. It wasn't until the drowning incident that my memory fully awakened. It turned out everything around me was a lie. I was the substitute for the woman Adrian loved, a woman living inside his perfect lie. The afternoon sun poured lazily through the floor-to-ceiling window, filling the air with a faint scent of roses. I was curled up on the sofa, wrapped in a thin blanket, like a small animal kept in a gentle cage. Adrian sat at my feet, reading a poetry book to me, his expression focused and deeply affectionate. I closed my eyes, sinking into this moment of peace and happiness. It felt as if the entire world had dissolved, leaving only the sound of our breathing and heartbeats. He suddenly paused, his fingertips tracing the outline of my brows and eyes, before resting a warm kiss on my forehead. "What's wrong? What are you thinking about?" His voice was low and tender, capable of melting away all the anxieties in one's heart. I slowly opened my eyes. All I could see was his gaze, deep as the ocean, reflecting only me. His focus was so intense it almost took my breath away. I shook my head, managing a faint smile. "Nothing. I just feel like this is all too wonderful." He smiled. It was a smile so perfect it felt almost unreal, the curve of his lips practiced countless times, yet it still had the power to easily move a heart. He was always like this. He remembered my favorite flowers, the dishes I loved, and even knew which corner I habitually retreated to when I was upset. He would meticulously plan surprises for my birthday and have something I'd casually mentioned the day before delivered to me the next day. Everything was always just right, without a single flaw. This kind of love was like a tailored dream. It made me fall for him again and again, willing to be spoiled like a child, content to lie in the river of love he wove, with no desire to wake up. But deep in my heart, there was always a tiny thorn. It was buried deep, constantly reminding me that this happiness might not be secure. I recalled Adrian's non-biological sister, Vivian, an adopted daughter in his family. At the time, I didn't know she had always loved Adrian, and therefore, hated me to the core. She politely offered to show me around the garden, but the moment Adrian was out of sight, her expression changed into one of mockery. The wind in the garden blew on my face, but offered no coolness. "You must be pleased with yourself, aren't you?" Vivian flung my hand away, turning to look at me with a cold sneer. Her eyes fixed on me like a viper watching its prey. "Living in this huge house, enjoying Adrian's affection, spending your days like a princess." My heart clenched, and I twisted my fingers into my skirt, remaining silent. She took a step closer, her smile growing more twisted. "Too bad, you're nothing but Sophia's shadow." In that instant, my heart felt as if it had been brutally stabbed, and my blood instantly froze. "You're lying," I instinctively shook my head, my voice trembling so much I could barely hear it. Vivian scoffed, her eyes full of sarcasm. "Don't believe me? I'll show you, then." She abruptly pulled an old photograph from her bag and shoved it violently into my hand. The girl in the picture had a brilliant smile, her eyes crescent-shaped, her expression bright. But that face was identical to mine. My hand instantly went cold, as if I were gripping a piece of ice. I stared intensely at the photo, my heart aching with every beat, my breathing nearly stopping. The intense feeling of déjà vu made me tremble all over. "Now, do you still dare to say you're not a stand-in?" Vivian sneered, her voice utterly cruel. "You think he loves you? Wrong. He only loves the shadow of another person." Every word was like a sharp blade, stabbing precisely into my heart. My tears streamed out uncontrollably. The photo slipped from my fingers and fell onto the ground. I felt all the strength drain from my body and collapsed onto the grass, my vision blurred, unable to make a sound in my throat. Just then, a familiar, urgent set of footsteps rushed toward me. "Emily!" Adrian ran over. Seeing the photo on the ground and my tear-streaked face, his expression instantly became terrifyingly dark. He bent down, picked up the photo, and glared at Vivian, his eyes like daggers. Vivian was startled. She tried to maintain her composure but still stumbled backward in panic. Finally, she bit her lip, turned, and hurriedly left. The wind was still. The entire garden was silent, save for Adrian and me. He crouched in front of me and pulled me tightly into his embrace. The hug was warm and solid, like the only safe harbor I had. He lowered his head, kissing my hair repeatedly, his voice choked but resolute. "Don't listen to her nonsense, Emily. You are my only one." I looked up through blurred tears, meeting his deep eyes. There was no hint of deception there, only genuine distress and sincerity. I wanted to believe him. I forced myself to believe him. Because the love he gave me was too real and too tender. So real that I couldn't bear to admit that it might all just be a lie. The birthday party Adrian threw for me was breathtakingly extravagant. A priceless yacht was moored on the night sea, its dazzling lights illuminating the entire deck. Champagne bubbles burst joyfully in the flutes, laughter, music, and well wishes intertwined. Everyone was celebrating, but I felt an inexplicable sense of unease, perhaps the feeling that none of this truly belonged to me. I forced a smile, dressed in a gorgeous gown, like a doll displayed in a storefront. Adrian stayed by my side the entire time, his tall figure was my only anchor. He fended off guests I didn't want to see and politely declined overly enthusiastic toasts on my behalf. His hand never left mine, his warm palm a silent declaration, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." But a shadow lingered in my heart. At midnight, the party reached its peak. The music was deafening, the dance floor crowded, and the air was thick with the scent of alcohol and perfume. I went out onto the deck for some air. Just as I thought the night would pass peacefully, a familiar figure stumbled into my view. Vivian. She was clearly drunk, her makeup slightly smeared, her eyes bloodshot. A smile spread across her face, but it was one of chilling distortion. She swayed, walking toward me step by step, each movement fueled by hatred. My chest suddenly tightened, and I instinctively took a step back. But she laughed, closing in until she was practically whispering in my ear, her breath reeking of cheap alcohol. Yet her voice was cold as a viper. "Emily, do you really think he loves you? In his eyes, you will always be a substitute." My body flinched, my blood instantly turned to ice. Before I could retort, she grabbed my shoulders and violently shoved me. The madness in her eyes startled me. "If you die, Adrian will stop being so obsessed." Accompanied by a cold laugh, she used all her strength and pushed me hard off the deck. Ah! My scream was swallowed by the sea wind. Splash! The biting cold seawater instantly filled my mouth and nose, and my body sank like a stone. The darkness was boundless, and all I could hear was the rushing water. My lungs felt squeezed by countless hands, the feeling of suffocation overwhelmed me. I struggled frantically, flailing my limbs, trying to keep myself from sinking too fast. As my strength failed, my vision blurred, and my consciousness began to fade. In the moment before the darkness consumed me, a torrent of unfamiliar images flashed through my mind. The university library. Sunlight streamed through the windows onto the bookshelves. I ran into a handsome young man. He smiled gently, his eyes focused, as if the whole world contained only me. On a tree-lined road. He was riding a bike, and I was on the back. The wind tousled our hair, and our laughter echoed in the sunlight. A shouting match between parents, the screech of tires. I screamed and reached out, but all I heard was the sound of shattering glass, blood and pain intertwined. Those fragmented memories pieced themselves together like a puzzle. A bolt of lightning tore through my mind. I am not Emily. I am Sophia. My chest heaved violently. I snapped my eyes open, the water pressure making it nearly impossible to shout. But the name screamed within my heart, as if it would tear my very soul apart. Just as I completely despaired, a powerful hand reached out from the darkness and gripped me firmly. I was pulled up, gasping desperately for air, coughing until my throat felt shredded. It was Gia, Adrian's aunt. She threw herself beside me, panicked and anxious. "Sophia, no, Emily. Hold on." I was dragged back onto the deck, soaking wet, in a state of utter disarray, shivering uncontrollably. A commotion broke out. In the flickering light, I saw Adrian's face. He had lost his composure. The man who was usually cold as ice now looked terrified, trying to rush over and hold me, but he was held back by the crowd. In that moment, I saw the panic and fear in his eyes. But I had no mind to care. I desperately wrenched myself free from my aunt's embrace and staggered into the cabin. Tears and seawater mixed, blurring my vision. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. Morning sunlight streamed through the window. I was covered with a warm blanket, but my body was still cold and shaking. My aunt was sitting by the bed, her eyes full of tenderness. Before I regained my memory, she was my neighbor. We lived abroad, and she claimed I had been there all along. At the time, I had absolutely no memory of my past, so I believed my name was Emily, believed it was the house I'd lived in for over 20 years, and I trusted her. 3 years ago, she invited me to return to the country with her. It seemed natural that I met Adrian and became his lover. But now that I found my memory, all of it turned into a setup created just for me. I opened my eyes and looked at her, tears instantly blurring my vision. My voice was hoarse. Aunt Gia, she quickly squeezed my hand, her tone gentle. What is it, Emily? Don't be scared, I'm here. I bit my lip, my voice trembling. I almost screamed the words out. I'm not Emily. I'm Sophia. My aunt froze instantly, her eyes wide, her face etched with shock. I used all my strength to tell her the memories that had suddenly flooded back, the first meeting at college. The beauty of our love, the car accident involving my parents, the blood and the shards, and the 3 years of blank memory. By the end, I was sobbing uncontrollably. Gia was already weeping. She held me tight in her embrace, her voice shaking. Sophia, my child, you finally remembered. I'm so sorry, I truly apologize for keeping this from you. In that moment, the last shred of fantasy in my heart was completely shattered. I was not a substitute. I was Adrian's original love. I didn't sleep all night. Outside the hospital window, the first rays of dawn sliced through the sky like a sharp knife, brutally cutting the darkness open. But no matter what changed outside, my heart was utterly dead. I huddled in the hospital bed, the thin blanket unable to ward off the bone-chilling cold. Those memories, those fragmented scenes, were now finally pieced together, like a mirror, mercilessly reflecting my true identity. I am not Emily. I am Sophia. The girl who smiled brightly on the university campus, the girl whose eyes, meeting Adrian's in the library, reflected sunshine and the future. I clearly remember the moment we first met. The library was so quiet you could only hear the sound of turning pages. I was holding Pride and Prejudice, and he had a heavy book on financial derivatives markets. When he bent slightly to reach a book for me from a high shelf, our eyes met. I nervously looked down, but then I heard him chuckle softly. You like Jane Austen? Our story began that day. We walked side by side on tree-lined paths. His bike seat carried my laughter. In the cafeteria, we fought over the same piece of fried chicken, laughing like two unsuspecting children. On the bleachers of the basketball court, I cheered for him loudly, and even while drenched in sweat, he always waved to me first. We made so many promises about the future, to travel together, to get a cat, to rent a small apartment after graduation and live a simple, happy life. Back then, I truly believed the fairy tale would come true. But reality was crueler than any fairy tale. Adrian's parents had never shown me a shred of kindness. You're just an orphan. Don't dream of marrying above your station. He needs a wife who can help his career, not someone like you who will only hold him back. Their words were as harsh as shards of ice, piercing my very bones. Even when I tried my best to smile, I couldn't conceal the humility and heartache. Even more vicious was Vivian. She approached me as his sister, appearing gentle and considerate, but every single word subtly tore apart my confidence. She would casually whisper in my ear, Sophia, did you know? Adrian's parents have already arranged a marriage for him, a distinguished family, a beautiful and smart fiancé. A faint, almost undetectable smile would cross her lips when she saw my expression falter. It was a smile of victory. During that time, I was repeatedly consumed by self-doubt. I loved him, but I didn't want to be the reason he broke ties with his family. Whenever I saw him fiercely defy his parents, my heart felt like it was being torn open, bleeding profusely. Finally, I broke. On that rainy night, the pouring rain blurred my vision. I stood outside his house, soaked to the bone, my voice trembling, Adrian, we have no future. He was stunned, the pain and disbelief in his eyes are still deeply imprinted in my mind. He rushed over, his eyes red, gripping my hands tightly, his voice raw, why? Tell me, why? I dared not look into his eyes. They were too fiery, like they would burn me to ashes. I steeled my heart, pulled my hands away, and ran into the rain without looking back. I thought I was doing it for his sake, to spare him more torment. But I didn't know that this separation would be the dividing line between life and death. On the way to the airport, that car accident struck like a nightmare. The screeching brakes, the shattering glass, the pervasive smell of blood, all of it ended my world. I thought I had died. But when I opened my eyes again, I had become Emily. Those 3 years of blank memory were filled with lies and falsehood. Adrian was gentle and attentive to me, everyone called me Emily, and I myself truly believed I was another person. Now, the truth has been revealed. I finally understand that the so-called Emily was just a cage. An illusion used to trap me and numb me. But why? Why did Adrian, knowing I was Sophia, make me live under another identity? Why did he choose to weave a lie rather than let me face the truth? My heart felt ripped in two. One half was still immersed in the past sweetness, the other was filled with anger and betrayal. The sky outside the window was fully bright. Sunlight penetrated the glass and shone on me, but it brought no warmth. I gritted my teeth, tears blurring my vision. Adrian, I whispered his name in my heart. You said you would always love me. Why did you lie to me? In this moment, I finally realized that I was not Emily, tossed about by fate, but Sophia, imprisoned by a lie. But I won't stay silent any longer. No matter how cruel the truth is, I will uncover it myself. Aunt Gia sat beside me, her eyes red and swollen, filled with remorse. She started to speak, but I preempted her, my voice hoarse. Auntie, why did you help him lie to me? Gia's tears instantly welled up. She held my hand, her voice choked with sobs. Sophia, I'm sorry, I truly am. This was all Adrian's idea. He begged me to take you abroad, to give you a completely new identity. He thought, that way, you could start over. He said he would gain independence, break free from his family's control, and give you a new love, one without obstacles. My heart felt pricked by countless needles, an overwhelming, dense pain. I didn't want to hear her explanation, I just wanted to be alone. I pulled my hand away, turned my head to look out the window, leaving her with a cold, unforgiving back. Just then, there was a knock on the hospital room door. A nurse walked in and placed a bouquet of white roses on the bedside table. They were my favorite flowers. They're from the gentleman outside, the nurse said softly. I didn't speak, just stared at the roses, finding them incredibly jarring. I used to think these flowers represented love, but now, they felt like accomplices to this enormous lie. The nurse had barely left when Gia's phone rang. She answered the call, listening to the report on the other end, her face growing increasingly serious. I overheard fragmented words, yacht surveillance, the car accident 2 years ago, call the police. Gia hung up the phone and turned to me, a hint of shock in her voice. Adrian has already acted. He investigated the surveillance footage from the yacht and found the evidence of Vivian pushing you into the sea. More importantly, he also uncovered the truth behind the car accident 2 years ago. It was orchestrated by Vivian. My heart seemed to stop altogether. Vivian thought you were dead, so she was boastful about it to her friends. Adrian's assistant used certain methods to get those friends to reveal the truth. Now, Adrian has turned all the evidence over to the police, and Vivian has been taken in. My mind was a complete blank. The car accident 2 years ago wasn't an accident, it was intentional. Adrian. Was he a devil or an angel? He could meticulously plan a lie just so I would fall in love with him again, yet he could also personally send his own sister to prison to protect me. His love was too complex for me to understand. Just then, the hospital room door was knocked on again. Gia stood up, hesitated, and then opened the door. Adrian stood outside, his face etched with clear anxiety and exhaustion. The moment he saw me, the light in his eyes instantly ignited. He wanted to walk toward me, but my heart became colder than ice in that instant. Don't come closer. I spoke, my voice husky but carrying an undeniable firmness. He stopped, the light in his eyes slowly dimming. Sophia, let me explain, I don't want to hear it. I closed my eyes, a tear sliding down my cheek. I didn't want to see his hypocritical face, or hear his deceitful voice. I just wanted to be alone, to deal with my life that had been twisted into a complete mess. My coldness wounded him. He opened his mouth but said nothing. From outside the door came hurried footsteps, mixed with an angry shout. Adrian! Where did you take Vivian? How dare you do this to her? I snapped my eyes open, looking toward the door. Adrian's parents appeared in the hallway, their faces a picture of rage. Their appearance seemed to violently thrust me back to that cold starting point. The angry shouts in the hallway stabbed directly at me like a sharp sword. I snapped my eyes open, looking at Adrian's parents, their furious faces particularly distorted under the hospital's pale lights. Adrian's father, John, whose face was usually stern and cold, was now full of fury. He pointed at Adrian, his voice trembling with anger. You put Vivian in jail for this woman? She pushed Sophia into the sea, and more importantly, she orchestrated the car accident 2 years ago. Adrian's voice was equally icy, every word powerful and clear. I have the evidence. I won't let anyone who harms her get away with it. Nonsense. Vivian is family, we watched her grow up. She's just young and foolish. Adrian's mother, Mary, shrieked. She tried to push past Adrian and rush in. But he firmly blocked her way. Foolish? Adrian's gaze swept over them like a knife. Do you know what she did to me? Do you know what she did to the person I love? All you ever care about is your reputation and your interests. You've never once considered my feelings. I lay in the hospital bed, listening to their argument. This wasn't the first time I'd heard them fight, but it was the first time I'd heard Adrian defend me with such fierce passion. He was no longer the puppet constrained by his family, he was like a furious lion, determined to protect his territory at all costs. I won't be controlled by you anymore, Adrian's voice was firm and strong. From now on, none of you will interfere in my life. My heart was heavy with mixed feelings. His words felt like a declaration 3 years too late. 3 years ago, he wanted to fight to the end, but I ultimately chose to flee. Now, when he had finally gained independence, I was already emotionally exhausted. The arguing sounds outside the door gradually faded until they disappeared completely. I knew Adrian's resolve had shocked his parents. Peace returned to the hospital room. Aunt Gia closed the door. She came over to me and said softly, "Sophia, you heard him. He genuinely has the ability to protect your relationship now." I didn't reply, just turned my head to look out the window. My mind was a tangled mess, impossible to sort out. After a while, the hospital room door was gently pushed open. Adrian walked in, his face full of fatigue, yet carrying a hint of determination. He looked at me, his eyes slightly red. "Sophia," he began, his voice rough. "I know I lied to you. I was truly terrified back then. I've been regretting for years that I didn't take you to the airport. Maybe then you wouldn't have been hurt. Even if there was still an accident, I could have protected you with all my strength." He tried to reach for my hand, but I instinctively pulled away. "Adrian, I'm tired." I spoke, my voice calm but with a sense of finality. "I don't want to play your games anymore. I don't know if you love me, or if you love the substitute identity you created for me. You are her. You are Sophia. But what about Emily? The Emily you personally created?" I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. What about the Emily who was so blissfully happy, thinking she had found true love? His body visibly flinched. He opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. "I need time, and I need space." I closed my eyes and said softly, "I don't want to see you right now." He didn't speak again, just stood there silently. After a long moment, he slowly backed out of the room. After he left, I looked at Aunt Gia, my eyes filled with pleading. "Auntie, I want to leave here again. This time, let's go quietly, without telling anyone." Gia didn't hesitate, she simply nodded. "Okay, we'll go. This time, no one will find you." We left again. We didn't say goodbye to anyone, nor did we leave any messages. I didn't even leave Adrian a single word. I felt like a deserter, running away miserably from love once more. Aunt Gia didn't ask me why, she just stayed by my side, silently supporting me. This time, she didn't tell anyone my whereabouts, including Adrian. We went to another country, a strange city. I poured all my energy into work, volunteering at an orphanage. I loved the pure smiles of the children. Their world had no deception, no lies. I immersed myself in their world, trying to forget everything about the past. But every day, an email arrived promptly in my inbox. Sender, Adrian. I never replied, but I read every single one. In the first email, he wrote, "Sophia, I was wrong. I shouldn't have lied to you. I didn't want to control you, I was just too afraid of losing you." In the second email, he wrote, "Sophia, I put Vivian in jail, and I declared my independence to my parents. I'm not trying to earn your praise, I just want you to know that I am actively resolving all the obstacles between us." The third email, the fourth, the fifth, the content of every email was different. He would share his work frustrations, tell me about something interesting he encountered, or mention something he saw that he knew I would like. He didn't just apologize repeatedly, he used the most ordinary way to tell me about his life, his heart. He used the most sincere emotion to prove that he had never forgotten me for a moment. Often, in the dead of night, I would look at those emails, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't deny that his love was deeply genuine. But I also couldn't forget that he had personally woven a lie for me. A year passed this way. That day, Aunt Gia received a call. It was Adrian. "Auntie, please, I'm begging you, will you tell me where she is?" I'm going crazy." Adrian's voice was exhausted and hoarse, betraying deep despair. "Adrian, why are you doing this to yourself?" Gia's voice sounded helpless, but she intentionally turned up the phone's volume slightly. "She needs time, and you need time too." Just then, a familiar voice suddenly came from a radio next to Aunt Gia. "Dear listeners, welcome to our afternoon tea program. It's 3 p.m. local time in City A. Today's broadcast is..." Adrian's voice suddenly paused. Gia knew he had heard the information he needed to hear. Gia simply sighed softly. "Adrian, she reads every email you send her, very carefully." With that, she hung up the phone. And at that moment, on the other side of the world, Adrian looked at the disconnected call, his expression shifting from despair to shock and finally, to determination. He immediately opened his computer and checked the schedule for the next flight to that city. Adrian flew to the city almost overnight. He didn't come looking for me right away. He knew I needed time and space. He watched me from afar, like a secret guardian knight. Knowing I went to the orphanage every day, he quietly rented an apartment nearby. He would go there daily, watching me silently. Today, as usual, I was playing with the children on the grass. A little girl named Lena, playing too happily, accidentally fell and scraped her knee, crying loudly. I was about to walk over, but a familiar figure got to Lena faster than me. It was him. Adrian. He crouched down, without a hint of disdain, and gently wiped the tears from Lena's face. He took a band-aid from his pocket, carefully placed it on Lena's knee, his voice low and tender. "Don't be scared. You just fell. Stand up, and you'll still be the best." Lena stopped crying. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with admiration. Adrian took Lena's hand and walked toward me step by step. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart pounding like a drum. The nervousness he used to have was gone, replaced by a trace of determination in his gaze. He handed Lena's hand to mine and then stood before me. He looked at me, his eyes full of apology, yet with a hint of plea. "Sophia, I'm here. I don't know if you'll be upset to see me. But I still want to fight for this. I promise you, my parents will never again be an obstacle between us." My eyes instantly welled up. His appearance was so unexpected, yet so inevitable. I shook my head, my voice husky. "Adrian, I like it here. I like being with these children. I hope that my life will no longer have so many lies and deceptions." I didn't reject him, but I didn't accept him directly either. I simply told him that I had fallen in love with this place, fallen in love with my new life. He looked at me, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He knew I wasn't rejecting him, but telling him that what I needed was a completely fresh start, a future free of lies and deception. He didn't say anything else, just gave me a deep look, then turned and walked away. I watched his retreating back, feeling a little lost. But just as I thought he was leaving, the very next day, he rented an office right next to the orphanage. Adrian truly didn't leave. The next day, he moved a portion of his company's operations to the city where I was. A previously vacant storefront next to the orphanage was rented by him and transformed into a simple, modern office. He was no longer the aloof Adrian. He wore simple shirts and casual pants, showing up at the office on time every day, working like an ordinary person. His life was divided in two. When busy, he was the CEO who controlled a business empire. In his free time, he would come to the orphanage and awkwardly play with the children. He'd play soccer with them, tell them stories, and even help me fix the broken faucet in the kitchen. The children all loved him. Lena would cling to him, asking when he would take her on an airplane. Charlie would share every one of his drawings with him, and Adrian would listen patiently, offering the most sincere compliments. The smile on his face became purer, without a trace of pretense, as if he had returned to the passionate young man he was 3 years ago. Watching his transformation, my heart was a complex mix of emotions. I couldn't deny that his love was profoundly genuine. He proved to me through his actions that he was willing to give up everything he once had for me. The wall around my heart was slowly being dismantled by him. Today, I was preparing dinner for the children. Adrian walked in, carrying a tray with a delicate cake on it. Happy birthday, Sophia, he said softly, placing the cake on the table. I was stunned. I had forgotten it was my birthday. I thought I had forgotten, yet he remembered. He walked up to me and knelt down on one knee. I stared at him in shock, his eyes full of determination and tenderness. Sophia, his voice was rough and sincere, I love you. From 3 years ago until now, from Sophia to Emily, the person I have loved has always been you. I told a lie once out of fear of losing you, but my heart has never changed. He took a small velvet box from his pocket and slowly opened it. A dazzling ring sparkled under the light. Will you marry me? I looked at him, tears instantly blurring my vision. I finally understood that everything he had done wasn't for atonement, but for a new beginning. He was giving me a choice. An opportunity to confront the past and embrace the future. I slowly extended my hand, allowing him to slide the ring onto my ring finger. I will. The light of tears shimmered in his eyes. He quickly stood up and pulled me tightly into his embrace. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating our embrace. The children around us clapped their little hands and cheered for us. Love is never perfect, but this time, he was proving with the rest of his life that he would never let me down again. The story ends, but our happiness is just beginning.